Welcome to the Drum Shuffle, a podcast offering insights, perspectives, and conversations for drummers. I'm your host, Jamie Eads.
Hey, how's it going out there, everybody? Welcome to the Drum Shuffle. Jamie Eads joining you as I do each and every week. This is episode 154. So I've been remiss. Happy New Year. It's probably way too late to say Happy New Year, but took some time off for the holidays, which was great. Spent some time with the family. My daughter was home from school. We got to spend a lot of quality family time together, and it is her senior year in high school. So lots and lots of college applications got completed over the break for us, and it has taken just a lot of time. I'm not complaining, but I've been remiss getting this episode out. It is here. We are going to be joined by the great John Sparrow of the Violent Femmes right after this message from our sponsor, Los Cabos Drumsticks. The best kept secret for drummers is finally out. Los Cabos Drumsticks may look like the sticks you grew up with, but these are not your father's drumsticks. Los Cabos Drumsticks is Canada's #1 drumstick brand, and they are coming to a retailer near you. With operations in over 28 countries worldwide, thousands of drummers have already discovered the Los Cabos difference. Using FSC certified wood from Canada and the US, Los Cabos make the finest quality drumsticks, percussion tools, and accessories on the market. The best news, Los Cabos Drumsticks offers you a ton of choice. They have 22 individual drumstick models and 14 percussion tools, many of which are available in 3 different wood types: maple, white hickory, and red hickory. Red hickory comes from the center or heart of the hickory tree and has been independently proven to be both stronger and more elastic than white hickory without adding a lot of weight. While most drumstick manufacturers have shunned red hickory, Los Cabos Drumsticks has embraced it, becoming the only established stick brand in the world to offer a full line of red hickory drumsticks. To learn more about Los Cabos Drumsticks, visit them online at loscabosdrumsticks.com, follow them on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and don't forget to ask for Los Cabos Drumsticks at your favorite retailer. Dare to be different. Join the Red Hickory Revolution with Los Cabos Drumsticks. All right, guys and girls, as I said before the break there, we're going to be joined by the great John Sparrow from the Violent Femmes here in just a moment. And I've got to tell you, we recorded this interview back probably about a week before Christmas, and we just had a fantastic conversation that lasted almost an hour and a half. So this is a little bit longer episode, but we covered a lot of ground in there, and John is just a wonderful guy. I'm so glad I got to know him, and his story is so great. And if you're not a fan of the Femmes, what's wrong with you, first of all? Secondly, just the way he carries himself, I would say, is just the absolute mark of a professional musician. He was an open book, answered all of my stupid questions, and we had a really in-depth chat that I know you're going to get a lot out of, and I'm just so pleased that he came on the show. So please help me welcome to the Drum Shuffle podcast, John Sparrow. Hey, John, good evening, man. How are you, brother?
I'm great, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, thanks for taking time to do it. I appreciate it. How are things up in Milwaukee this evening?
Well, we still don't really have a lot of snow. It's starting to get kind of cold. But like we were talking before we started rolling, I think a lot of us are just kind of trying to tie up all of our loose ends for the holidays. So I got back from tour, I think it was early November, and had to get kind of reacclimated into my home life. It takes a couple weeks. And otherwise, it's just been a lot of like, speaking with yourself and a lot of different interviews, and just kind of, it's been a lot of talking about what I do.
Yeah.
And it's been a good blend. I'm starting to kind of catch up with local musicians and playing locally, and in small little runs regionally here in the Midwest. But you would think it's the holidays, but it seems like I'm busier now than I was when I was on tour.
Well, it's amazing. It's amazing how that happens. And, I've tried to, kind of anecdotally pass along, you've been home, 6 weeks now. And I'm sure you still have a suitcase packed somewhere, right?
Okay. Well, Jamie, that's funny you say that, because being at home, I'm also, obviously, because I play drums, I'm restoring one of my kits, and there were parts all over the dining room. My girlfriend's like, so you're not dirty. You're just kind of like, what are all these metal things in this box? So, and she's like, so, are you going to put the suitcase in the basement? And I'm like, yeah, I'm getting to it. So I've been going through all my drums, and I'm restoring some stuff, and I finally got the suitcase into the basement just last week.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because, when I get ready for tours, and she's been dating me, 3 or 4 years, in the beginning, she'd say, oh, you have to get ready for tour. And I'm like, what do you mean? I still have 2 weeks. No, you have to start packing. I'm like, are you kidding me? Once you get used to this life, right?
Yeah.
I could pack for Australia right now.
Right.
And I could be on the plane. But, I wonder if that comes from our lives, especially for drummers, right? We always have so much crap.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then, you know how it is? Like, how many gigs have we played, Jamie, where it's throw and go? And it's like, no sound check. There's no time to sit there and make sure your throne is at the right height, or your cymbal stand. Oh, I don't like the crash is too hot. It's just, you got to go.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just finally put the suitcase in the basement last week.
Well, I mean, that's just kind of the life, for a long time, it's not this way for me anymore. But, when I was a youngster and never turned down a gig, there was always a suitcase under the bed that was fully packed and ready to go, because it's
a lot like the military, right?
Yeah. You didn't know. You might get a call at 3:30 and say, hey man, we need you in a van at 5. Right. And you just,
and you can't turn those gigs down, man.
Right. So you just had to be ready to throw and go, like you said, man. And it's just, I don't know. I've tried to explain to people how crazy this world is. And until you've lived in it, you don't really know how hectic it really can be, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And like we were talking earlier, before we started rolling with the interview. But especially at my level, when I say my level, I'm not saying that it's about fame. I'm saying when you're at this kind of level, like the touring group, right? And you got to consider the age of the guys in the Femmes, right? So I'm 46, and Gordon and Brian, I think Gordon might be close to 60. Brian, I think, is in his 60s. Nobody is, the whole stress is about, okay, well, we have to be here at a certain time. We have to do this. But it's not a big party. Like you were saying, people have they have this idea of what this world is like. I think what maybe some of the younger groups, they're partying and, drinking and doing drugs, whatever people do. I mean, when you're in your 40s, certainly even if you want to have a serious career in this world, especially in the music business, you have to take care of yourself. You have to eat properly, make sure you hit the water. Obviously as drummers, I'm on the pad for hours each day. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not what everybody thinks it is. I mean, like you said, there are moments where for 90 minutes, it's the greatest thing in the world. And it is. And there's other times where, we go out and have a nice, like for us as quote unquote rock stars, it's like, oh wow, we went and had a great meal.
Right.
It's like,
yeah.
That's like our excitement. What people think, there's no way you can, keep up that kind of partying lifestyle if you want to have a serious career. So it is a lot of waiting. A lot of waiting, but fortunately, again, at my level, we can live comfortably because we have to. We have to. Otherwise, could you imagine going on stage? I mean, I'm not 20 years old and I'm like drunk or so. I don't even we don't do drugs and drink before. That's not how it is. But if you want to have a serious career, you're going to do things the right way,
Yeah, well, for sure. And, I've also tried to explain to people, I think everybody has this maybe, romanticized vision and all the stuff they've read about, Keith Richards and Led Zeppelin and the 70s. Sure. And I've tried to explain to people, some of that stuff is pure, legend or fables. And I think, it's kind of like the fish story. You're a good Wisconsin boy. I know you've done some fishing in your life, right? It's like
absolutely
you catch a 6-inch fish, and 5 years later, it's Moby Dick, right? And
right.
The legend just keeps growing, and I've tried to tell people, yeah, sure, Keith Richards was a wild guy at one time. Sure, Led Zeppelin had big, massive parties, but that would be. I just don't think it was ever at the level that everybody's led on to believe. My experience has been, if you were lucky enough to have a day off, you might go catch a minor league baseball game, or you might go bowling or something like that and really tie one on that night or whatever. But if you're doing the grind of play a gig, get in the van, drive to the next venue, there wasn't any time for fun. It was like, I've just got to get to the next site and put on the same show tomorrow. Has that been your experience?
Well, of course it has. I mean, I think that, you obviously, you've lived that life. It doesn't matter what level. It's kind of the same. I mean, there's a lot more luxury as you go up, in the ranks. But it's still the same thing. It's still a job is a job. I mean, I hate to say job because I really love what I do. But, of course, it's the same experiences. And, so you get a day off. And I do get to go see things. I think a lot of that is, for people that are not in our world, I think that they only can go by what they've seen on TV or the Moby Dick stories. You know what I mean? Like, I heard you I heard you guys are in a rock band. You guys have hookers. It's like, you're still believing that campfire, stories? I mean, then no. So, no, you nailed it. That's exactly what it is, And fortunately, touring with other groups and all that, I have to tell you, Jamie, being a fellow drummer, and I was talking to Chris earlier from A&F. First of all, that company is just fantastic. And what he's doing, he's the one that connected us, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But we have this fraternity of drummers. And it's great when I tour with other groups, with the Femmes, or you play shows with other bands, as you're coming up. It doesn't matter. We have a fraternity where we all kind of are like our own support group.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, maybe guitar players or singers might be listening to this going like, oh, you drummers, you guys are whatever they might tease us about. But the general population, I think that they definitely have a distorted perspective. A job's a job.
Yeah.
I mean, but this is, I'm not going to lie, it's an amazing job. When I'm getting to do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for sure, and I've said on this show, I mean, until I'm just blue in the face, every time I go see any band anywhere, I'm stealing something from the drummer, right? Something in his set that he does. And the difference between guitarists and drummers is I give credit. I'll be like, oh, this is a lick that I stole from John Sparrow of the Violent Femmes.
Sure.
Whereas a guitarist is like, no, I invented that last night in my bedroom, right? I mean, it's just...
That's right. Well, it's like that. I mean, so many drummers have used this phrase, but I think it was like Steve Smith or something. He's like, listen, all we do is steal from each other. The goal is not to get caught. But we'll give credit to each other because I wonder if, because we're a drummer, first of all, when you go to play a gig, typically, right? I mean, I'm up front and center with the Femmes, but any other gig, where do we set up?
In the back.
In the back, in the corner.
Yep.
Yeah. We're not musicians. the whole saying, like, well, we have an orchestra, right? We have 13 musicians and we have a drummer. So I wonder if a lot of that, and I'm not trying to play this pity party, but that might play into why we're also, have this fraternity, because it's like a therapy group. Like, yeah, so I was working with this band and they were yelling at me about the tempo. I was rushing this, but we're all we are slightly victims in a way, when it comes to, I say, the rock and pop world. But now with the Femmes, so the Violent Femmes started doing a lot of like orchestra shows, right?
Yeah. And
I did orchestra stuff in high school. That was way different than the Tasmanian Symphony Orchestra, LA Symphony Orchestra, Kansas. Like, this is the real deal. And I remember when we were in Tasmania, I was talking to some of the other musicians, and I'm like, well, hey, I'm just a drummer. You guys don't really think of me that highly. And they're like, oh, no. The percussion section is really respected. And I said, what? They're like, yeah, the horns, the brass section. I'm like, what?
Maybe we should all relocate to Tasmania.
Well, no, I don't think that's necessarily a Tasmanian, but I didn't understand that dynamic until I started doing the orchestra gigs with the Femmes. Like, wow, I'm actually, as a drummer, I'm respected. These different, that's the orchestral world.
Yeah.
So that was kind of an eye opener. I got my ribbon for the day. I felt good about myself, but I do believe that the nice thing about drummers is that we can have this camaraderie, you know what I mean? And yeah, steal from each other, but still give each other credit,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't pick a better instrument to play, honestly.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no doubt about it. And, I think there's also, this thought process, I guess, in, the rock and pop world of that, drummers are expendable or replaceable. And I think to a certain extent, bass players as well, as long as the singer and the guitarist are, original members, it's still good or whatever the case may be. And all that stupid stuff that gets said kind of under the breath, so to speak.
Sure.
But, you mentioned Steve Smith earlier. Journey has had a lot of great drummers since Steve Smith, but it's not Steve Smith, right? I mean, and I can see and hear the difference. I think the average Joe that paid for their ticket probably doesn't care. But for the purist, and a perfect example, can you imagine Zeppelin with anybody other than Bonham? Or the Stones with anybody other than Charlie? I cannot. You know what I mean?
No, well, listen. What do I know what you mean? Of course, I'm a living example of that. So now consider I've been with the Femmes for close to 18 years. Well, I came in and I replaced Victor. He's the OG. This is the guy that the three of those guys created the sound, and Victor is the one that created the drum sound. Now, whether I don't, I'm good. I was great friends with Victor. I haven't talked to him in a number of years. Your life goes in different directions, but he's produced albums for me, when he wasn't in the band. He lives here in Milwaukee, and I love him dearly. But so this question comes up a lot. It's like, wow, so you guys were friends and you replaced him. And I'm like, well, I don't have nothing to do with the business side of things. It's just the way it worked. But, I had to step in, and I'm not Victor by any means, and I don't want to be Victor. I want to be me. So Steve Jordan stepped in for Charlie, and from what I've heard, it sounds great, and he's really done the best he can to honor Charlie's sound and his playing, but he's not trying to copy him. Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Zeppelin was smart. Personally, I think that was smart that they never really tried to do Zeppelin. Like they had those couple things with Jason, which is really a sweet honor to Jason and his father. But I'm in the same boat, man. Steve Smith, you were bringing him up, but I'm the guy up there, and everybody, you hear that stuff like, oh, well, where's Victor? Where's Victor? It's like, he's not here. I don't know what to tell you. That's none of my business. But you guys are coming to see the show, and I do honor his. I just had somebody else ask me these questions, and it's like, I honor the parts. Of course, it's Blister in the Sun, right? So I have to go, doo-doo, and all these different parts of the song that's part of the song. I don't copy his fills note for note. You know what I mean? I get to be my own person and player, but it is tough. And it doesn't weigh on me, but I understand where people are coming from because I'm a fan of other bands. You know what I mean? Where it's like, Pearl Jam was never the same after Dave Aberzies left. To me, I get it.
Yeah.
But you either stop doing it, the band stops doing it, or you move on and you find another drummer. It is hard. Isn't that kind of a weird thing about bands? Because as musicians, we see it a certain way, and we understand it from the musical standpoint. And then the fans, I think, they look at it like, well, I just know this band is these people.
Right.
And
right.
when one of them, in this case, the drummer leaves, then they get they don't understand why the drummer left. They may not understand it, whether it was about business or the drummer's playing or drugs or alcohol abuse, whatever. They just say, oh, well, this is not the same. And fortunately, in my case, I've been accepted by the fans. You know what I mean? Because I do honor, Victor and I both come from a jazz kind of feel. Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the Femmes have that kind of swing to the music, also the improv. So, it works out for me because it wasn't like I was trying to, I'm not the diss on a band like, let's say, Winger or Dokken or something. Just throwing it out there. I could do those gigs, but I don't think I would do it any justice because it's not kind of my style. You know what I'm saying? This gig works for me in my style and my playing,
Yeah.
So I don't know if any of that kind of, I don't even remember the question. But
No. It makes perfect sense. And
you know what I mean? Like, this is a common thing that we all talk about. It could be a huge band like Violent Femmes or Led Zeppelin, or it could be a local band, you know what I mean? And you have to serve the song. And fortunately, my style works for these songs, you know what I mean? And I do respect Victor's contribution and his feel. It just works for me. So it was an easy slide in,
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, I mean, and then you have the flip side of that to a certain extent. I'm really good friends with Scott Hessel of the Gin Blossoms. And,
oh, sure.
Hess is probably the fourth or fifth, maybe sixth drummer of the Gin Blossoms. But
sure,
he is by far the longest serving drummer in that band, right? Like, he's played longer than anybody else. And, he and I had a great conversation about just the chemistry of it all. Like, I don't know what it is about the guy that played on the record. Like, we have to have that guy. But sometimes the chemistry isn't there for that group of 4 or 5 people. Right. And then you have to plug in another guy. And I've said a billion times, and I think everybody agrees with me, it's not necessarily about the notes that you play. It's about the 22 hours on the damn bus. Right. Well,
you know what? You nailed it. That's the other thing. I remember, first of all, the Violent Femmes were my first concert. Okay.
Really?
And then, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah, that's a mind trip, right?
Yeah.
And, right. And so I must have been like 15 or 16. And I remember reading in a local newspaper at that time, Victor had left the band. Well, in my 16-year-old mind, because I had been playing the first Femmes record in my basement, pretending I was in the band. I'm not lying. Yep, I used to do that. And so I knew those songs note for note, you know what I mean? And I thought, okay, well, I have to figure out how I can audition for these guys. Come on, man. I'm 16, but I was young, you know what I mean? I didn't know any better.
Right.
And I said, in my mind, and many times before or after that, when I hear about auditions, I'm like, I could kill this gig. Well, I didn't realize until I started touring regionally with my own band, rock bands, and then, of course, touring with the Femmes. Wait a minute. It's not all about playing. Can I be on a bus with this person or in a van with this person?
Yeah.
You know, for all those, you're basically a makeshift family.
Yes.
And if somebody doesn't like, that's a different dynamic. I think that a lot of younger artists have to understand if they're trying to go out and tour, I guess, and do auditioning. It's like, well, I don't understand. Why didn't I get the gig? I can kill this. It's like, yeah, but were you maybe kind of a little weird at the audition? You know, the guys are looking at you going like, this guy's a little tight-wound, or he's like, whatever it is, that's negative. Personality is so important as well, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, that's another thing that just like the people that are not entertainers or musicians, they don't understand that other side of the world, you know, our world. Young musicians don't understand if they haven't toured and understand what that's about. They just don't get, you know, like, can we depend on you every day? Are you going to be obnoxious in a van or, you know?
Yeah,
that's a whole different dynamic.
Yeah, or are you going to lose your shit when, you know, the plane is delayed by 3 hours?
Yeah.
You know, I mean.
Oh, man, and I've seen it happen. And I understand now, like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
You know, and I've had to deal with that with other musicians, you know. And it's like, wow, man, now you just screwed up my whole day because you're flipping out because you're going through a tough patch with your girlfriend at home. Or, you know, it could be a million things, you know. Because we're all in this bubble, and life still exists outside of it, but don't bring it into here because this, you know, it's like we're on a mission. You know, we're on a mission, and we all have to be on the same page here and keep it positive. You know.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know that's
a thing that I wish young musicians. I hope that if they listen to what we're talking about, I hope that they learn from that because. I hated when the older guys used to tell me stuff. They're like, you don't get it. And then I realized they were right. But I was young and I was arrogant.
Right. Yeah.
So I hope that, you know, take it from a new, like a new, you know, like a newbie old timer now, right? Please listen to us.
Yeah, man. I do. And, you know, I pickup gigs, things like that, you know, like if you get a wedding band sub gig or something like that. You know, I've joked around and said, you know, if I never have to play Brown Eyed Girl again, that's perfectly fine with me. But you'd better lay in the pocket and do it right, or you won't get that phone call next time, right?
You got it.
I mean,
you got it.
We all have to do crap that we don't want to do. And, you know, I jokingly said to you before we, you know, started the interview, the music business is great, except for the business part.
Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting for us as drummers, right? So, you know, when it comes to publishing and writing, it's words and melody. And I mean, I was just talking about this with somebody else as far as the business side of music, right? And I said, I'm not giving opinions or saying, oh, this person and that person, they don't handle their business right. But the facts are that as drummers, typically we have no right to any publishing or writing because it's words and melody.
Yeah.
Now, if you're in a group, you know, where everybody's like, hey, we're all for one and one for all, great. Then you guys can split all your writing and publishing. You know, but it happens to a lot of people. We're drummers where they're out and they're with the group, and these guys say, yeah, no, it's words and melody. You're just a drummer. It's like, well, dude, I came up with this or I did that. Those are harsh realities, but it's the way the business is set up. I think also I learned a lot because I was around a lot of successful musicians as I was coming up. And a lot of them had some bad stories and some of them had great stories, but I always listened. And I learned from that. I would have never set up a BMI account, you know what I mean? But I was out doing things, and I was fortunate where I could be a part of the writing and publishing. Maybe I even did lyrics. It's not about, so to speak, getting rich and the fame or all that stuff. But also, if you're contributing, legitimately as a drummer, whether it's lyrics or arranging, well, you should understand that you have a right to get your due, Now, is it fun sitting in front of the computer, applying for BMI and then going back and forth and having these conversations with people in groups going, well, I think I should get X amount of public. No, it's not fun. But do you want to have a career? Well, then you have to do it. It's just like you were saying. Some people would say they're plumbers. Sometimes you have to go to a house and clear out a pipe. Not going to be the cleanest. And then other times you just have to fix a faucet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A job's a job, Well, the business side of things, but they have to deal with it. It seems like the younger people nowadays that I hear about, not that I'm super old, but, the younger guys coming up, they are on top of their business more now than when I was coming up. I think there was a lot of people that just kind of didn't pay attention, where the younger people are really on top of it, which is great, Well, you should get your due.
And you have to be on top of it in this day and age because, when I first started having any level of success, and it was never a lot, but it was the mid to late 90s, and the music business was like, if I look back now, it was completely different than what it is today. I mean, it was still, about selling physical records like cassette tapes and compact discs. And, the first record deal that I ever saw, I was the guy that was like, wait a minute, why do we get paid more for selling a cassette or a vinyl than we do a compact disc? Everybody only buys compact discs now. And they were like, oh, well, CDs are still considered an experimental format. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? You're
OG, just like me. Yep.
Nobody was selling vinyl. You couldn't give away vinyl in 1996, so I just think nowadays, if you're not on top of the business, you're going to fail, at least financially. You may be quote unquote successful, but financially it's a dead end if you're not on top of the business. And, now you have 360 marketing deals, and it's just a completely different game. So if you're 23, 24 years old and starting a band, you'd better know all this stuff, or you're behind the 8 ball out of the gate.
Yeah, I think that it is. They are more aware. I mean, Jamie, do you remember press packs?
Oh yeah, man. I stuffed
that's
20,000 of them.
Oh man, how many times did we go to the post office? It's a lot easier with the younger kids though, because they're right, literally on their phone or on their laptop, and they're just killing it that way. But you remember how we had to go and do band photos and get them printed. Then we had to get manila envelopes. We had to get on the phone, call the booking agent. Hi, remember that?
Oh yeah, sure.
I mean, so I'm not trying to rip on the younger generation, be like, you kids don't know how good you've got it. But they don't know how good they got it. We had to physically do that. Get in a band van, drive to the post office, send all the press packs out, write it down, call all these people because, there was no email, there was no texting.
Well, you mentioned calling the booking agent. I mean, this will blow your mind. We actually had to pay a long distance phone bill back in those days.
Yep.
Those calls cost money. Yeah.
Man, I know. So I'm not trying to complain about that. I do like to see how the younger generation, they seem like it is easier for them. I do like that they're kind of on top of their business a little bit more. Because, listen, if you're going to be a steam fitter or a plumber or an electrician or whatever it is that you want to do in life, you still have to take care of your bills. Everybody has bills. You have to think about your future. So in the music world, it is a little trickier. So it is nice. It is refreshing to see the younger people. They do a lot more collaborating, and they really watch their money a lot more, which is great. But people are still blowing their money. I don't know if people are getting advances anymore, though.
Oh, no. See, there's no such thing.
I think imagine those years. And there's a lot of bands that actually, they got advances and they handled it right. You know what I mean? And they were smart with their money. But, those days are long gone,
Yeah.
I think licensing, it seems like licensing is helping a lot for, good paydays. But I haven't been doing a lot of that because I've been caught up in the touring world and then, just playing regionally and all that. I haven't actually sat. I mean, the Femmes recorded an album, Hotel Last Resort, but I mean, since then, if I go into a studio, that's the other thing. Studios? What?
Yeah.
You mean your buddy's basement? I mean, that's the other thing, that whole structure has changed. People still have studios, but I mean, people are recording stuff on their phone, you know what I mean? And it's making money. So I don't know where I was going with it, but it just, I guess the whole dynamic of the music industry is constantly changing. I always use this analogy, like I say, if you're a plumber, plumbing typically is, okay, you went from lead pipes to PVC. I mean, I'm not trying to be callous, but I'm saying the music industry is constantly evolving, and you have to stay on top of that. Merchandising, licensing, as opposed to, getting advances and selling, like you said, records or CDs or, you have to stay on top of it, and if you want to have a career. And it is a challenge,
Yeah, it is. And, I just think, in this day and age, I hate using that phrase, but in this day and age, I think in many ways it's easier to get your music out there. And I use this statement a lot, and I don't mean to be callous the way you said it, but the good news is anybody can make a great record today. The bad news is anybody can make a great record today. You know what I mean? Like the ocean is so much bigger and so much deeper. You could have, the next White album and 8 people hear it on Spotify, right? Like there's so much incredible music that just never hits anybody's ears because it has now turned into who gets the push from the right people, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Right. And I mean, think about how many great, even, when we were coming up, how many artists that we should have heard that were amazing and they just didn't get it into the right hands.
Yeah.
Now, of course, that was before the internet, so it was even more of a challenge, but I think that challenge still exists now because you still have to get it. You have to get the right person. For example, okay, that guy that was on a skateboard, ocean spray.
Yeah.
Okay, right?
Yeah.
Well, okay, I'm not dissing on him. I'm just saying clearly that got into somebody retweeted it. It just got into the right hands you know what I mean? And it blew up. Well, I mean, so now let's talk about the music world. Think about, like you were just like you were saying, it's just as hard now because there could be a million White Albums or Revolvers or Led Zeppelin 1, you know what I mean? That it's just not getting in the right hands, even though we have the internet. So as much as I was saying earlier, like, oh, these kids have it easier, maybe they, because I'm open-minded, maybe I could be wrong. Maybe they have it just as hard as we did. I don't know, because, it's constantly evolving. People are leaving Twitter. I used to love Twitter. I don't do politics, but, that was a great outlet for me to connect with people, So you have to constantly be on top of what's the new thing. And fortunately you can do it from your bedroom, but, it is something, I think about this stuff every day.
Yeah. Well,
it's constantly,
And to hear us talking, you would think we were both 75 years old. We're the same age. You're 46. I'm 45. Yeah. But
well, this industry, I'm not trying to complain or be negative, but there's guys, again, they go out and they're plumbers. Well, their hands start cramping up or whatever it is,
Yeah.
But after you 46 years old, right, you do feel like you're 78 because we've been hustling and grinding since we were teenagers, you know what I mean? And it's constantly, you're constantly, there's a lot of work that comes without pay. That's the one thing I think that can kind of take a toll on a lot of people. Like as if you're like a nurse, or you go to work, you punch in, you get paid, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying you're not working, you are. But think about how much work we put in as artists in general, and we don't get paid for it. But we know I think we have to do it because it's in our soul. You know what I mean? I think we're kind of chosen to be artists. But man, a lot of investment, paying it forward for, yeah. But I think that, I don't know if people really choose, again, I don't want to sound ignorant, but I don't know if people choose the life of being an entertainer. I think it kind of chooses you. It's maybe just a personality. It's what's best for your personality type and who you are. And at some point, that's usually where it weeds out the people that are just like, not really into this, and, or you accept it and you say, well, I'm going to educate myself as much as I can and be as successful as I can, be the best I can at whatever, my medium is. And then you just keep pushing forward, and in this case, like you said, we're 46 and I'm trying to figure out how to deal with half this stuff on the internet. Not that I'm, you know what I mean? Like, there's always a new platform. There's always something new,
Well, yeah. And I don't know what that is exactly, but
Yeah, me either. Let me know if you find out.
Yeah. I mean, I just think, I look at my daughter who's 18 and she's so much more hip on all this stuff than I am. And I feel like I've got my finger on the pulse. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
And she's like, oh my God, you're still using Facebook? And I'm like, well, yeah, of course I am. And she's like, okay, boomer. You know what I mean? Like
do I know what you mean? So my kids are 13 and 15 and my girlfriend's 30 years old. And she's like, so I love you. But, and then she schools me, or I'll talk to my kids and I'll be like, oh yeah, so this and that. And they're like, then they use these phrases like, oh, that's cringe. I'm like, is that a website? Oh, Dad. Dad.
Yeah.
Well, and then of course I listen though. See, that's the difference. Yeah. I don't get stubborn and I try to, I go, okay, well, teach me about it. Cause we're always we should always be listening and learning, right? Cause that's how I think the right way to go through life. But I'm with you, brother.
Yeah.
I'm getting schooled constantly, that's the new thing, right? So Facebook. And I'm like, I mean, my Instagram posts go to Facebook automatically, but I don't have I can't friend people and all that on there. I just an artist page. But I'm starting to notice that the only people that talk to me about anything on Facebook are typically over 50 years old.
Yeah.
Now I'm 46, so I'm not necessarily, being ageist, but hey guys, I'm not trying to look cool at 46. It's not a midlife crisis, but maybe start looking at other platforms. Facebook, it's still a thing, but I'm still struggling with TikTok. Not that I hate it or I think it sucks, but I know I have to do it.
Yeah, man.
And
these are things that musicians of a certain age, it's like, what do you invest in? You talked about the time investment that we all have in our careers. Sure. At some point you're like, I don't want to just spin my wheels, right? I don't want to waste time and energy and effort, but you have to cover every single base. And sometimes you feel like the guy putting his finger in the hole in the dike, right? It's like,
Sure.
And here's another hole over here. Now, you run out of fingers, you run out of time to keep up with everything you have to do. And that's going back to what you said about the younger bands. They're smart enough to know we need a social media person in our camp to take care of all this stuff for us. A good publicist or a good marketing person. It's just so different.
Yes, hands down. And that's tough because as you get older, because first of all, we spent our whole career doing things for ourselves, right? By ourselves. And then you start getting older, and a lot of people, as they get older, they start thinking they get curmudgeons. So they don't want to they don't want to embrace the new things, number one. And number two, they don't trust a lot of them. I'm not saying all older people, okay, I'm not offending anyone, but they don't trust, they don't want to give, you know what I mean? They don't want to trust in a new thing. And yeah, I mean, like, you got to use common sense. Like, there's people out there with better ideas, but you know, they know more than you know. So just kind of trust. But it's hard because this industry, right when you start trusting, something bad could happen. I've been fortunate. I haven't had any really bad experiences. But it's hard for people to kind of let go and trust in a PR person, or, you know what I mean? When those are the people, not only they know more than you, but they actually see you from an outsider standpoint, you know what I mean? And they might have a better perspective. It's a weird psychological thing. You know what I mean? As far as the business, because we're kind of vibing on this business thing, right?
Yeah.
When in reality, I just want to sit and play the damn drums. Can you just let me, I want to hit the practice pad, man.
Yeah.
But it's what it is, you know, like you have to put in your time. You still have to work, you know, but yeah, we could sit here and talk in circles about this stuff forever, but
I know,
you know, as far as the drumming thing, you know, so of course I connected with you through Chris and A&F Drums. And I'm maybe taking this in another direction, but again, it comes back why we're doing all this and why you and I are on the phone is because it was the drums. It was music, right? And people are still doing great things with instruments. You know, like with the electronic drums, I mean, I respect them. I've used them a ton, but A&F is doing some really cool things. There's still a passion there, you know what I mean? So that's their craft, right? Obviously, most of them are drummers, but they're building drums. And it's interesting to see how that world is changed because, like, DW just got bought by Roland, I believe, right?
Yes, correct.
You know, and so I guess it kind of ties into the whole business side of things. You know, Rami is doing fantastic things there, and he's his own entity. Well, DW was doing great things too, but they went to corporate world, you know. So it'll be interesting to see. I guess it's cyclical, you know what I mean? Like whether it's music or any type of business, you see these, you know, things are really good and have the right intention, and then they go corporate, just like any other, I guess, band, right? Think about how many bands. It's like, I remember them. Their first album was the best. And then they sold out to get signed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I wanted to talk about drums and not the business. Because you and I sit around and have to think about the business all day, you know?
Yeah.
And I just want to play the damn drums. Those guys do some really nice things there. And with the Femmes, I don't know if I'm, you know, taking this off on a tangent, but I got hooked up with them because Brian Ritchie, the bass player for Violent Femmes, he's a drummer himself. And he loves drums. And we were in Australia, and he said, I got this 16-inch snare drum. I'm like, nope, fail. Nope, not doing it. And he's like, no, try it. I like this. He always is. He comes up with these ideas, you know what I mean? Music, you know, with the instruments and musically. So I was like, yeah, well, this was cool. And then I must have done a search for, you know, bigger snare drums. And I found A&F. And I'm like, Brian, these guys do an 18-inch snare drum. And he said, get it. So next thing you know, I have a 23-inch snare drum.
Yeah.
And I have an 8, you're like, what? So, I mean, yeah, the drum, like, do you play a lot? I mean, what's I know you're interviewing me, but I mean, we're both drummers. Are you pretty active?
Yeah, man, I am. And, you know, I do more recording now than anything else,
sure.
You know, in terms of live playing and kind of COVID, I guess, you know, 2020 kind of put an end to a lot of the gigging for me. But, you know, sure. And I'm still trying to get hooked up with Rami because I do want to talk to him about some of the stuff that he's doing because he does think very much outside the box. And,
yeah.
You know, you bring up something interesting. The Femmes, you know, they have always, you know, it's never been a drummer in the back with, you know, a kick drum and, you know, a traditional drum set. It's always been kind of a cocktail kit or, you know, sure. Weird percussion stuff or whatever the case may be. So maybe you could kind of talk through, you know, some of that about how your brain works of, what am I taking out on stage with me to get through these songs?
Right. So, okay. So that was obviously with the Femmes, the sound is a snare drum and brushes. Okay. And so that's kind of like how the snare drum sound was a big thing when I joined. Brian he had different ideas and things he wanted to do with bigger snare drum. So that's that. Now, when they first started the band, as far as I remember Brian telling me the story, is they were rehearsing with another group. Victor and Brian had another band with local musicians. And there was a bushel basket in an attic. Now, I might have this kind of wrong, but I'm pretty sure I was listening. And Brian said to Victor, why don't you take that bushel basket and play it on that thing? The band was called the Dance and Trance Band, I think. That's the name of it. And eventually that bushel basket became part of what Victor used in his setup, right?
Right.
And that's where the name Trancephone came from the Dance and Trance Band. Again, I maybe have certain details wrong, but I mean, I hear all these stories over and over for many years. So then fast forward, when we were in between Victor had left the band in 2013 or something when we got back together. And we had Brian Viglione, who's from George and Dolls. He was with the band for about 3 years there. I was with the band since 2005. I was playing cajon. But Vig missed his flight. And we had TV in Montreal for the Montreal Jazz Festival. So they're like, well, can you do this, John? And I'm looking at him going like, are you kidding me? Like, you guys were my first concert. I used to play these songs in my basement. I'm playing in the band playing cajon. Of course I can play these songs. I said, yes, I can do it. Great. Bring your snare drum. We have TV. Vig missed his flight. So we're in a dressing room doing makeup and all that stuff. And there happened to be a Weber grill in the corner. They must have done like a cooking segment. You know what I mean? On TV, it was like a morning show. It just happened to be left behind. So we're getting ready to do this TV thing. And Brian looks at the grill and he said, why don't you just play that? I said, play what? He played it. Just play that Weber grill. Forget the snare drum, man. Just play the grill. I'm like, okay, yeah, no problem. Yeah, whatever. I'll play in a tin can, So we did. And I'll never forget being up there and looking at Gordon and Brian. First of all, they were probably like, okay, cool. Yeah, he can play. They knew I could play drums. You know what I'm saying? But then like, wow, this actually sounds good on the Weber grill. So then fast forward a little bit further, Vig left the group. And I was talking to Brian. He said, well, why don't you just, that's when I became the drummer full, did all of it. And he said, well, you're going to bring the Weber, right? And I said, absolutely. So Brian's kind of, he always has a vision.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You did Colbert with the grill, right?
That was technically my first gig.
Okay. Yeah.
And we were sound checking and the lid fell off and I'm like, oh, I can't have this happen on national television. So yeah, it was like really, I was thrown, of course I was already in the band, but I was thrown into this different role. And it was with the barbecue.
Well, so let me ask you this. So you have some unique requirements instrumentally, right? So when you start talking to a company like A&F, how do you explain to them, look, I don't want, a 22-inch bass drum and a 13-inch rack tom. Like you're going to have to think outside the box. How do you approach that conversation?
Rami and I had, I think, more talks about the floor tom because I use a 4x18 floor. So it's 4 inches deep, 18-inch wide. And I said, well, Rami, I only play on, this song and that song, but I need it to be dead. He said, dude, we're going to put wood hoops on this thing. It's going to be, I think it's it might be 4.5, but anyway, it's 4x18. I was like, okay, I trust you. I mean, think about this. We're not even talking about the snare drum. We're talking about the floor. We put more thought and talks into the floor tom. And he said, I'm going to port the bottom hole, or bottom head, rather. I'm like, okay. And so I got the floor tom, and I was playing it, and I'm like, wow, no, this is weird. The minute we ran it through the PA, that floor tom, I can't tell you how many front of house engineers and monitor engineers, people are going like, what is that? Going back to Steve Gadd, I heard somebody tell a story that they had the opportunity to play his kit, and they were like, it was horrible. It sounded so bad.
Yeah.
But the minute he got on it, it was like night and day.
It sounded like the Good Doctor. That's right. It's a lot of that sound comes from your hands, man.
Yeah, for real. And then how it's ran through the PA and all that. But so Rami and I spent a lot more time talking about that. When it came to the snare drum, I was like, hey, I like this snare drum. And he's like, cool. And I'm like, I play brushes. What do you suggest? He's like, honestly, brother, like use a Diplomat on the top. And I'm like, what? Who uses a Diplomat on the top? And he's like, trust me on this one, because you're playing brushes and all that stuff that's intricate. And so that was about the extent of, like interacting with Rami as far as the drums. You know what I mean? Like it was that easy, And then I ask him questions here and there because, of course, as drummers, we're a little nutty. So like one time we're playing in a hall and something's ringing and it's like, I'm thinking about going to a nickel show. Aluminum, you know what I mean? Like, and he caters to my nutball thoughts, but in general, it was really kind of a quick thing,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
and then he got involved with, the hardware too. Now he has the stands. Now think about that, Jamie.
Yeah.
Where do you get a snare stand for an 18-inch snare drum?
Yeah. Well, you're not ordering it off the Yamaha website or whatever.
Man.
Yeah.
So like I'm going, hey, Rami, I really like this. How do I mount this? Of course, now they have the hardware line, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But so I kind of came in a little on the earlier side with them because now they're just like blowing up. They were killing it back then, but it's just really, it's turning into something that's just fantastic. I love that it's independent too. Again, going back to the whole rolling thing, like I'm happy that I can still call the owner or text him, and he's like, "Oh, buddy, yeah, no, this and that." That's some old school stuff that I still appreciate. And I need that for my career. These are my tools. I need to be able to call someone.
Yeah,
I don't want to call customer service or have to sit, go on a chat and hi, my name is Robert. And it's fake.
Right.
I could still text the owner. Fantastic company.
Well,
and all the stuff they're doing is great.
That is one of the first pieces of advice that I give to younger drummers. And I get a lot of calls from people that, I went to high school with, for example. Hey, my son wants to start playing drums. Where do I start? Right. And, there's always the, the prepackaged, $499, I call it the Christmas special, right? At the drum store.
Sure.
And it's just particle board and, it's got some bad heads on it and, bad cymbals. And I'm like, look, you're going to be tempted to do that. Trust me, start searching Craigslist for something that's, 3 or 4 years old. You're going to get a lot more mileage out of it. But I tell all of these young drummers, figure out what your sound is. And most young drummers don't know yet, right? But you fall into that over time and you cultivate what your sound is. And I can tell you in, 2 sentences exactly what I'm going for. You can always take ring out of a drum. You can't add it back in, right? So I want, for me, I want whatever has the most resonance, the most ring, and then I'll deal with it after the fact.
Sure.
So you start getting into this is what I like kind of thing. And I tell them you have to figure that out early on so you can chase it and curate that into what your sound is going to be 20 years from now?
Yeah, it's tough because I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of guys or, people in general that, for example, we're talking about drums. They just play drums and they just want to get through the song. And they're like, oh, this is cool. This is fun. I'd make some extra money on the weekend. And there's guys that are out there, people playing, and then they want to have a sound. And then if you start thinking about that too much, I feel like that's a tricky thing, because I've had to answer those questions like, well, what do you think your sound is? And I know what it is, but I never went after that. I realized it's more of a personality thing, what sounds good to me. I didn't make it a whole contrived thing where it's like, all right, I have to figure out my sound. But I mean, as far as these younger people that are starting to play drums, my dad was a drummer, and he always told me, he's like, listen, man, if you're good, you should be able to play on a tin can.
That's right.
You should be able to play on one drum. Fortunately, I'm in a band where I can play on just one drum. But the point is that, the drums, tuning and all that stuff, just focus on playing, like the tuning and what kind of drums you're playing. Even though I could be starting like I'm contradicting myself, you do get to a point where you have a sound in your head and what you need, in my case with A and F, right? But these younger people starting off, just get any kind of kit. Learn how to keep time.
Well, yeah, sure,
Don't speed
of
up.
course.
Yeah. The fundamentals. And then listen, Jamie, if I give you any junky drum right now, you're telling me you couldn't tune it and make it sound good? Of course you could.
Yeah.
Like how many of these albums that we've heard, when you finally hear what kind of drums that were, when you listen to an album, do you, oh, that's a DW. Oh, that's a so. No, it's right. Played well. And you learn how to tune over time. You know what I mean? The personal preference, that's a different thing. But at the end of the day, these younger people, I always tell them, I'm like, they want to get started. I did a ton of teaching, and of course, I always wanted them to learn how to play a double stroke roll, basic stuff on just a snare. But most people, they want to get to playing a beat, and I think that as a teacher, I always kind of give them the basic fundamentals, but then get them playing. Because once you start playing a beat, think about that first time you play to a song, you're like, whoa, I'm doing it. That's when you get the bug, right? All that other stuff, you can figure it out. What kind of drum set you're playing. A lot of it is advertising, just like anything, like, oh, I have to have this kind of scented candle. Well, what do you mean? The candles, you know what I mean? Right. I know it's kind of a vague, a comparison, but the drums, when you're starting off, man, just start playing. You can make anything sound good.
I don't.
That's my take on that whole thing.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think I think a lot of it is ad driven, and back in the day, it was all MTV driven, right? What is my favorite drummer playing in his new video, and I've got to have that. And
all I got to say is Power Toms.
Yeah, man.
What?
Yeah.
That was what was on MTV.
Yeah. And, I think every drummer of our vintage owned a Pearl export kit at least once, right? Everybody had one. So I agree with you, but I think it's important for the younger guys and girls that are picking up this instrument. Probably the most important piece of gear they'll ever purchase is a metronome,
Oh, yeah, by far. You mean the app? You mean download the app? That's what the kids are doing now.
Yeah, for sure. But, had you asked me in 1988 when I first picked up sticks, I would have told you, no, it's not that important because I'm never going to have to play to a click track in a studio. Wrong.
Oh my God.
Fail. You know what I mean? Like that's the first.
Jamie, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Have you ever gotten fired from a session?
Hell yeah.
Me too, because I couldn't play to the click. Now I laugh at it because I can play on top of the click, I can play on the click, and I can play behind it, right? But basically what I'm saying is I totally agree with you. It's like, oh, man, I used to be afraid of the click.
Yeah.
So you're right. Yeah, get a metronome. Well, I have the app on my phone, so I use my earbuds when I practice on the pad, and I have that thing going. But yeah, of course. Because some people have naturally, they have good time, and other people, I think it's more of like, it's like singing, you have to exercise the muscle. Well, in this case with time, some people just don't have good time naturally. They have to. So I agree with you. I think a lot of these people should. It's how you present it though, Jamie, like as a teacher, the click for younger or just new students, right? It can be a little daunting. You feel like it's rigid. Where's the fun in this? So you have to know how to kind of present it to the student if they think that way. You're just like students that, I learned how to read music later on in my career. But in my mind, starting off, I was like, reading music, listen, man, don't tell me what to do, man. And it's like kind of really important because, it's a great way to kind of, explain things at times, But yeah, the metronome, the drums, just get going, just learn how to keep time. And like you said, the metronome, I would definitely suggest that. And don't worry about the business. It's like, goes back to what we were talking about earlier. We're sitting here talking about the business, and it's like, can we just start playing again?
Yeah.
I just want to play.
Yeah. If you're to a point where you have to worry about the business side of things, you've already taken care of the first part. I would argue. Right?
I would like to think so. Correct. Yeah.
And I'll tell you what the aha moment was for me with, playing to a click in the studio. A good friend of mine said, look, man, you're going about this all wrong. You are looking at the click as a dictator, right?
Right.
The click is not dictating anything to you. It's a reference, right? So like you're in charge of this, but that's a reference for you to follow, right? So that you're not rushing into a chorus or dragging into a verse or whatever the case may be. And that was like, I could feel the light bulb go off above my head. Like, oh, okay. So now it's just a reference point. And to your point, sometimes you'll be in a session and the producer's like, okay, this is going to be at 120 beats per minute, but I really want you to pick it up into the chorus and then drag it into the verse. And it's like, okay, now I understand. I'm going to play ahead of it in the chorus and play behind it in the verse. But
you're right. Exactly. It can be kind of intimidating. And so the way I embraced it, basically the same thing as you. I said, oh, wait a minute. When I finally understood, I said, oh, it's kind of like, it's just another person in the band.
Yes.
Like I had to think about it like, it's like a rhythm guitar player that in my mind. Okay. I'm not saying that this is viable, it's not end all be all, but I was like, oh, this is kind of like the rhythm guitar player. Like, when you're off. If you're off, you're off. You can be a little bit ahead or behind or nailing it, burying it, and then you freak out because you're like, I don't hear the click because you buried it. And that's another topic in itself, right? But I just treated it like it was another person in the band. Well, and then I was like, oh, I'm just jamming with the click.
Yeah. And I think, what opened up the world to me was, my first experience with playing to a click. It was literally a click, it was that terrible, click, 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 when, they opened up the world of, oh, it can be a shaker or it can be a tambourine.
Oh, yeah.
Or whatever, a cowbell. It was like, oh, hell, man, this is easy now. I'm playing with the greatest percussionist of all time. That's infallible.
That's true, yeah.
And when you have that, you're like, oh, wow, what a new world. But, to your point, God, we could just talk about click tracks for an hour. Absolutely. There's so much in this world that you never really think about until you talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just
absolutely. Well, and I mean, we both are in the same page, obviously, because of our experience and all that. But I mean, at some point, everything we could sit here right now with Steve Smith or Kenny Aronoff, and obviously everybody's got different road story, whatever, blah blah blah. But it comes back to the drums, right? In our case, and we're going to still talk about all the same things. Yeah, I did a session, and it was on a Pro Sport, and I had to put tea towels on it. Did you hear Ringo put towels? Yeah, and then you followed a click, and I had to. It's all the same story, but at the end, you know what I mean. It's like we're all. Nobody's story is any different.
Yeah,
you know, and so this is why you and I are going like, oh yeah, totally, because we're all going to have the same experiences at some point. Hopefully, with the younger people, if they're into that, you know. I remember when it quantized, I always say that word wrong, you know, like quantumization, or I always say it wrong. It's
quantize, snap into the grid, whatever, yeah.
Man, you're not going to quantize me or quantize, I always say it wrong. Like, no, I'm going to get the take right. You know, like, I was not into, that was pre-Pro Tools. You know, and then, of course, you know, with the singing and stuff, with the pitch shifting and all that. But I always wanted to get a good take, you know, and I still believe in that. You know, I had a couple people do some, you know, shifting beats years ago when I was in rock bands locally. But, yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's still, you have to play the drums, you have to keep time. You can push and pull. Also, you know, just talking to somebody, and I don't know if you went through this, because I came up with jazz, right? So I was emulating Buddy Rich, and my big guy is Gene Krupa, which is great, because great feel. But I went through the whole chops thing. You know, only to get into maybe in my 20s to realize that nobody cares about your chops, dude.
Yeah.
You know, like, serve the song.
Yeah.
And all the old timers used to tell me that. And I'm like, oh, that's just because you can't play. You don't have chops, man. And then I realized, yeah, unless something that you can do, you know, chops wise, serves the song, nobody cares.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have a good foundation as far as this is just my opinion. Okay. I'm not saying that I know everything, but you got a good foundation. You can keep time, you know, basic technique where you can, you know, play doubles, triplet, all these different things, you know. And I grew up being told, you know, if you want to work, you should learn all these different styles of music. But as far as all that, I watch these videos, you know, that kid that's online, Grayson.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Recruitment. Yeah.
Dude. That's like Buddy Rich on steroids. Yeah. I love him. I'll sit there and I'm like, I got to turn this off because, oh my gosh. You know, like, nope. And honestly, I'm really proud of that kid because he put in the time clearly and he's really good. Well, and I'm not downplaying what he does, but I've never been on a gig where anybody cared about my chops.
Yes.
They just wanted me to play the song.
Yes.
Which is,
and you know, not to cut on him or anything like that.
Not at all.
I'd love to have him on the show, but what band is he in?
Well, you know, and I don't get into it too much. Yeah,
right?
And I do. So, and again, we're not being critical, right? I know it's a fine line. So I thought about that, and I was reading some of the comments, and I think he just played a gig at the Bottom Line last week in New York. And there's a lot of people that are very hard on him, you know, like, dude, that's great, you know, but, you know, and I don't know.
Well,
you know, I would love to see him in a band where like he uses all that and it's an amazing song.
Right.
But you know, not because I'm jealous of him.
My point in that is, you know, we cannot, as the common thread of the drum community, I just don't think we should aspire to be, you know, YouTube sensations because
I agree with that. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I can sit down and, you know, with enough practice, I can learn how to play at, you know, 300 BPM paradiddles. You know, it would take me some time, sure. And that's impressive and everything. But again, I'll go back to my other bad joke, and that is if I can get in any wedding band and lay down Brown Eyed Girl for the 9,463rd time,
And it feels good.
And it feels good. It's probably going to pay my bills more than being able to do the 320 BPM paradiddles on the internet.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
And I hear what you're saying. And and I know where you're going with that, because then you could have younger people, or, you know, it doesn't matter. They were like, oh, so it's only about money? It's like, no, man. But like, I do enjoy making money because I know I'm talented.
It's about getting to play more often is what it's about.
Yeah, and I like songs.
Yeah.
I like playing the songs. So you should get that guy on the show. I don't have any connection, I don't think, to him. But, I mean, I follow him and I look at his videos. And that is the kind of person where it's like, please get into a band. Yeah. Because whatever band you're going to get into, I know that you'll do it in a musical way, and it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
You know, but think about Buddy Rich. Okay, Buddy Rich and Gene Krupa, right? Gene had great technique when he was younger. Gene also was very musical. If you listen to the Benny Goodman stuff, I mean, he really knew how to set up, you know, soloists and how to back soloists, and he's very, very musical. He did not have the technique Buddy Rich had. Well, Buddy Rich could run circles around anybody, but really, you know, like, I'm not ripping on Buddy Rich, but like my dad would say this, he's like, yeah, but so what? You know, like Gene is known for Sing, Sing, Sing. Gene's known for playing with all these big songs, or arrangements rather, with Benny Goodman. But, you know, Buddy never really, I mean, he had West Side Story, but it was really a feature of his playing. Yeah. You know, he killed it with the arrangement. I'm not downplaying Buddy, you know, and I don't want anybody to hate on me for my opinion. But think about that. You know, Gene was more musical, and Buddy was a machine. Nobody could touch that guy. Although I think this Grayson guy, that's his name, Grayson, right?
Yes.
That dude, I honestly, in my opinion, I think he's better than Buddy Rich.
Yeah.
Because, like, he can play. I mean, listen, I totally fanboy on him as far as the technique and all that. But, you know, think about that. It comes down to the songs, right? Ringo's Ringo, whatever you think of him. Well, he played for the song, man. You know, we don't, drummers will sit around and listen to drum solos. I can only handle it so long. I want to sit down and listen to an amazing song. Like, wow, listen to this fill that sets up how it goes in this change, and it changes your mood in a song. You know what I mean? Well, I don't know if that comes with age or maturity. You know, I don't know. But here's that's another.
Here's the big difference, you know, and I don't mean to interrupt, but...
I'm always interrupting. Go ahead.
This is the thought that always comes to mind when somebody mentions Ringo. Here we are, 60 years later, still dissecting those 200 some odd songs, trying to figure out what was it he did that made this so special. And the prayer of any drummer, I would think, is, God, I hope somebody's listening to my shit 60 years from now, trying to dissect what it was that I did. And, you know, you talk about chops, you know, in the modern day and age, you know, I'm pals with Nate Morton, who is the drummer on The Voice, and he toured with Cher and Paul Stanley and all these other people. And Nate will tell you all the time, I have zero chops, man. I have zero chops. And that dude is killing. And I'm like, man, if I had a quarter of your talent, I would tell everybody that would listen, look at all my chops. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and his chops, it's because he figured it out. He's like, dude, play the song, man.
Right. And
he's got the chops he needs to you know, serve the song.
And that's my point. That dude can play any song ever put to tape. I mean, he can just do it and do it right. And he will tell you, I have zero chops. And I'm like, man, you're full of shit.
You know? Well, you know, and here's the thing I was thinking about too, and I may even brought it up earlier. You know, we're the age that we are, you know, and I remember being younger, and if I would have been listening to this, I would have been like, okay, old timer. And again, I can't repeat enough, if there's younger drummers listening to this, like, dude, hear me out, man. I hated when people would tell me this stuff. I thought they were wrong, but wow, please listen to me. We are right. They were right. Just play a song, dude.
Yeah.
You know, like if you can find a way to sneak in some of that cool shit you do, that's what my dad always told me. He's like, if you can figure it out, like if you can make it so it's part of the song, awesome. But, you know, I would show my dad, I'm like, he's like, cool, what song do you use that in? And I would get mad at him, and I'd be like, you know what, you don't get it, Dad. But, yeah, he did get it. Yeah, it's amazing, right? You know, I mean, there's so many of these guys out there. Like, you know, I was thinking about Kenny Aronoff the other day. That guy can play.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying like, oh, he's got a ton of gigs and he's got a great career. He talks about when he's playing, he thinks about where he's placing each snare hit, backbeat, so it feels good for the song. Well, I mean, if you want a career, it's a pretty healthy way of looking at your craft.
Yeah.
You know, like, wow, you know, and you know, also, doesn't it feel good when everybody locks in?
Yeah, man. There's
nothing
like, better.
What a feeling, right? Yeah, man. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to get on my soapbox and talk to the younger drummers, but gosh, I hope they listen to us. You know, I mean, and I love talking drums. I could talk about heads, like I was talking about the A&F. I'm restoring drums. I'm re-wrapping a kit. Like, why am what am I doing? You know, like, I don't like the way this wrap sat, so I'm re-wrapping kits and rethreading, you know, because then it goes into that world, maybe, so to speak, like the nerd world. I'm rethreading things, cleaning out, you know, my buddy, he works with the Femmes as well, and he's a drummer, and he's like, I just lubed up my pedal, all my cymbal stands, I got a bunch of gigs. It's like, we're kind of a rare breed.
Yeah, man.
You know, like totally nerdy, you know, but yeah, I guess just don't lose focus of the instrument too, you know, like.
Well, I've said,
you know,
I've said this before, that drummers are, you know, we are, you know, no matter what level you're at, okay, to be a drummer, first of all, you have to have the artist spirit to play the instrument. You also,
I figured you say mental illness.
Well, but you also have to be, you know, at least a serviceable woodworker and carpenter. You have to be at least a serviceable mechanic, and you also have to be a serviceable machinist, right? Like, because all this stuff.
No, you're dead on. Correct.
Like, that is a rare breed.
Who does everybody turn to in the band?
Yeah.
Not just for the playing.
Exactly.
Who's the guy typically, who's driving everybody in all their gear?
Exactly.
The drummer.
Exactly.
Who's the one that's back there keeping everybody together but still getting yelled at? The drummer.
Yep.
Oh, I don't understand. My truss. Yes, correct.
Right. Well, I mean, I can't tell you how many gigs I've been on where it's like, hey man, do you have a Phillips screwdriver? Of course I do. You know, hey man, do you have a zip tie? Of course I do.
Yep.
Hey man, you know, I've got this weird problem. Oh, no problem.
My pedal's screwing up. I don't get. Okay, let me look at it. I just don't know. I don't.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, you know what? It's awesome that you said that, because it's so true. It's not just about the music, but you know, oh my God, we're having a love fest on drummers. But it's proven itself time and time again. You know, we're not just the guys with it being the backbone, but it's just the voice of reason. Well, yeah, we think that we're making sense. Oh, we are. You know, like that. You ever, what's his name? Billy Ward. You know, he's like a session guy. He played with a bunch of pop artists. And I was reading something years ago. He had a beat bug on his snare, and he was talking about tempo. This is something that we all deal with as drummers, right? You were speeding up, you were slowing down, all that. And he said that he had put a beat bug on his snare, and I think he might have been working with Jewel or somebody. I forgot who it was. And they were giving him a hard time. And he's like, so I just documented all the numbers. Only a drummer goes out of their way to like write down the tempo on the snare. You know what I mean? It's like, that's how we are. And he's told the artist, he's like, well, I documented all this and we were right on. You know, we are a rare breed, you know, so I don't know, that was just something that you must have sparked something in my head that made me remember that story I read. He was like, oh, I was getting all a hard time from these singers, and they were like, you're speeding up, you're slow. And he used that beat bug, and he's like, nope.
Yeah.
So emotions, but we are the backbone, Sounds like a public service announcement, but they need us.
But it's so true, man. And I just think that anybody who has devoted a chunk of their life to this instrument that we all love so dearly, and I hope that this podcast, that the Drum Shuffle becomes the public square of the things that everybody needs to think about or talk about or emote about. I hope that's what this show is. And man, I can't thank you enough, John, for coming on and
of course,
and just being an open book. And I want to be respectful of your time, and I want to.
I don't care. Yeah, no, and I know I love to talk. I mean, we all do.
So
but
do
you're
I.
Fine.
I want to keep this.
Here's the thing.
I
know we want to keep going. I'll say one more thing, and then you can hang up on me. You were talking about we always want our drum parts or somebody that's going to be analyzing it 40 years from now, right? And so you're talking about the podcast. I hope, just say the podcast will be something that inspires another, because some drummer will be online and they're going to be looking around and they're going to somehow be sitting in their bed, right? And they're going to listen to this. Even if it's not 1,000 drummers that are totally like, holy shit, I listened to this thing with this guy from the Velvet. They're going to stumble on this or another episode, and it's going to be the one thing that they're going to always remember and they're going to learn something from, and I'm a big fan of the drummer from Pearl Jam, Dave Aberzies, and now, fortunately, I've been able to, be in touch with him. And the first thing I told him was, hey, man, I always read how you took time to, address, be with the fans, and you would go out of your way to sign autographs. And of course, I'm a good person, but I always remember that. And now I'm in a situation where these people just want a minute of my time, and I go out of my way because you inspire that. And he said, oh, really? So you never know when people are listening.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be a million drummers that learn, from a podcast or from an interview, in this case, Dave. But all you need is one, So there will be people listening. So I've had a great time talking to you. I'm sorry. I like the yap, I play on top of the beat, clearly.
No, man, this has been great. And I was just going to say, man, I want to have you back. I
would love to.
At some point.
We could talk about something specific. Yeah.
Yeah. But I just think, to what you said, you read an interview and you internalized that, you remembered it. And to that, I say, what a time to be alive that I have, I'm not trying to take any credit, but I have this beautiful thing here that's, 150 plus episodes. And man, it gets me emotional to think, had I had a podcast to listen to when I was 13 and starting out, or 12 or whatever, and to hear what all my heroes were thinking and what made them tick and what were they talking about. Holy crap, man. You know what I mean? It just blows my mind.
Well, so that gives you the motivation to keep pushing forward, and regardless of, whatever struggles you might have, doing it, staying consistent as far as posting, you just keep doing it.
Yeah, man.
The same thing with the drumming. Okay, well, I'm not famous or I'm not, but we just keep doing it. So just keep doing it, man.
Yeah.
Because people are listening. Yeah, it's a lot easier now because, interviews with drummers, the Buddy Rich Memorial concert tapes, that's, my dad and I used to watch them over and over. And I'm like, this is the first time where I could actually hear these drummers I never even knew existed because they're playing with Buddy Rich Band, but also the interviews, And so now, like you said, you have the podcast, people are listening. Obviously, people are listening, but it's those special ones that this could be, this one or any of them could be, that's how special. Yeah, you have a voice. No different than when you're on stage playing drums,
Yeah.
It is special. So I'm happy that you look at it from that standpoint. And I would love to come back.
Yeah, man, we've got to do it. We've got to do it.
If you want to talk about 7 A's compared to 2 B's, no problem. I'm all in. I'm all in.
We'll count on it, John, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, and we'll do it again real soon, okay?
Yeah, I look forward to it.
All right, man. All right, guys and girls, that's going to wrap up episode 154 of the Drum Shuffle podcast. As always, thanks to John Sparrow for taking some time out of his downtime to spend with us here on this show. I really do appreciate it. And thanks to each and every one of you for tuning in and week out. We simply can't do it without each and every one of you doing so. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. As you guys know, the biggest thing you can do to help me out with this show is to share a link with a friend, hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you use to listen to podcasts, leave us a star rating, a review, a blue thumbs up, whatever you can do to help is greatly appreciated. As always, we answer every single email we get here at the Drum Shuffle Podcast. Our email address is thedrumshufflepodcast@gmail.com. Our web address is thedrumshuffle.com. And you can always find more information on me over at jamieeads.com. Quick programming note for you. The episodes are going to be kind of hit and miss here over the next 3 months, simply because, as I said in the intro, it is my daughter's senior year of high school. And many of you know, she's at a ballet conservatory that's a few hours away from here. So we've got a lot of senior year stuff going on. So lots of travel for me and the missus. So please bear with me. But rest assured, we are booking guests. We are doing interviews, and I'll get them to you just as quick as I possibly can. So thank you for your patience on that. Just stick with us. Things should open up a little bit after the May graduation. Woohoo. So again, thank you guys so much. I can't do this show without you. So until next time, may your head stay strong and your sticks never break. Cheers, everybody.